there was a point there where I was starting to sense the let's just pack it up and go home vibe coming from the Vikings. And Kirk Cousins, I think, kind of willed them to keep going. And for as much criticism as primetime Kirk gets, and he deserves it, 12-21 in primetime. Now, the Mike Zimmer excuse for that always was, well, you're playing pretty good teams in primetime, so it's harder to win in primetime because they don't put, bad matchups in primetime. So Cousins had 364 passing yards, 31 for 44, 4 touchdowns, no picks last night after having, 3 in week 1. So, he did play well. The one fumble, and I tweeted primetime Kurt, the old Bruce Allen insult of Kirk from several years ago when he multiple times referred to him as Kurt. People were like, well, what? That's not his fault. That's not his fault he didn't block. The quarterback still has to have an awareness as to what's going on around him. And when the pocket quickly collapses, you can't just turtle. You can't just take the hit and hope for the best. That's one of the flaws in Kirk Cousins' game. He doesn't have the ability to get away from that when it's happening like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and other quarterbacks do. He just it's just like, uh-oh, here it comes, and he freezes. He does deer in the headlights in those moments, and I think there's a little deer in the headlights for the entire team when they get into those big spots because, they say a team is a personification of its coach. I think a team is also, to a certain extent, a personification of its quarterback because he's the guy who's holding everyone else accountable. It's one thing to hear it from your coach. When you hear it from somebody who's wearing a helmet, when you've got that Peyton Manning attitude, like the SNL United Way commercial, not that he was that way with his teammates, but he was probably not far from it when guys weren't getting their job done. You didn't have to hear about it from Tony Dungy or Jim Mora or Jim Caldwell. You heard about it from Peyton Manning. The quarterback, to a certain extent, has that ability to set the tone, and I don't think that's Kirk Cousins' personality. So between not having the mobility to run away from those issues and maybe not being the kind of natural leader that gets everyone to rise up with him in those big moments, 12-21 in primetime games.
Yeah, I'm not... I don't break things down into prime time versus whatever. It's a 53-man team. I get it. The quarterback is responsible for more than 153rd, and I got that. I think that's one of those stats that I hear it goes in one ear and out the other. Tell me the playoff record, and tell me the record in games you have to win to make the playoffs. And those are a lot more valid to me than what a guy is if a game starts at 8:20 in the evening. I just doesn't really matter too much to me.
But, Peter, it's not about biorhythms or moon phases. It's about the magnitude of the game. I think you agree with me at a certain level. We're on the same page here. When the game is of a certain significance, that's when some guys rise up and some guys shrink. And at night, it's not because it's under the lights. It's not because it's cooled off from the high temperature of the day. It's because it's a bigger spot. Everyone's watching. The game is significant. I'm going to be criticized more if I don't show up in this spot. When I'm playing at 1 o'clock Eastern on a Sunday and there's 8 other games going on, nobody's really going to notice what I do until they see the highlights. It's just
But the question is, Mike, the question is, do you criticize and put a negative mark in the column on Kirk Cousins for how he played for 4 quarters last night? I don't. And so, in other words, you're blaming Kirk Cousins, or you're putting a negative mark in his column because the punt returner fumbled, because Justin Jefferson tried to reach a ball into the end zone. And so that's why I think a lot of these things that we view as important numbers, I think it's important if it's a playoff game, if it is a game to get your team into the playoffs. I'm not a big person to say that, if a game is on Monday Night Football or Thursday night or Sunday, whatever. I don't think it's valid. I just don't.
I think there's a fundamental difference between guys who are great throwers of the football and guys who are great leaders. And not every great thrower of the football is a great leader. And I think that's what I'm really getting at. the guys who will rise up and take the team with them in those key moments, the guys who command the kind of natural respect in the locker room that all Kirk Cousins has to say to Justin Jefferson is one time, if it happens in practice, if it happens in another game, because Kirk Cousins, like Peyton Manning, possibly a football junkie and is looking for anything that he can glean from any other game, constantly plugged in, constantly dialed in, not taking Tuesdays off. I'm sorry, people get mad when I say that. I'm not going to stop saying it. You're an NFL quarterback and you're taking Tuesdays off when you're on a Sunday to Sunday schedule. Get the hell out of here with that. You think Peyton Manning took Tuesdays off? Peyton Manning's going to watch film of other teams in the league, looking for anything he can. And when the Peyton Manning of the world goes to the Justin Jefferson and says one time, you get near the goal line, never reach the ball out. And Justin Jefferson knows if I ever do that, I don't have to answer to the coach. I got to answer to Peyton Manning. That's one of the reasons why Peyton Manning was so great. It's that natural leadership, taking control of everything, elevating yourself and everyone around you, holding everyone to a degree of accountability. Back to the fumbling. Even though it's a punt return fumble. I don't want to go near Peyton Manning after I do something that stupid and I didn't tense up and hold on to the football at the end of a long return and deprive him of great field position. It is a very intangible thing that defies analytics, that never shows up on the stat sheet. But to me, Peter, it's one of the fundamental differences between the great quarterbacks and the good quarterbacks. The great quarterbacks scare the shit out of the rest of the guys around them to the point where they don't screw up in big spots either.
Well, it's not like Kirk Cousins can start doing that now after not doing it for 6 years.
He is who he is.
So
that's my point. He is who he is.
Yeah.
He is who he is. It's why it's his last year in Minnesota. He is who he is.
Yeah. But I will also say that I don't think there are a lot of quarterbacks who do that, who go up to Brandon Powell and who go up to the best receiver in football. I don't know that Joe Montana ever went up to Jerry Rice in a locker room after a game, after he had a big fumble, and said, if you ever do that again, I'm not throwing the ball to you. I think that is a little bit unrealistic to expect that a quarterback of any stature would go up to the best receiver in football who has won countless games for you, and he F's things up, and he knows that he F's things up because after the game he said it's on me. I don't know. I understand what you're saying. Kirk Cousins is who he is. I get it. He's a mild-mannered, wonderful human being who, at the end of his career is going to be, mayor of Hillsdale, Michigan. And everybody will love him, and he will work hard to make the community a better place. And I'm not making fun of him. I'm not doing I'm just simply saying that he is a guy who has life in the proper perspective, or, a lot of times. But I just think, Mike, you can't ask somebody to be who he isn't.
Oh, and that's my point. And if he's not going to be that, then it's on the coaching staff to try to coax it out of him or supplement what that leadership void can do to a locker room. And I'm not saying that, these are rare traits, but this is why he doesn't have an overwhelmingly great record in primetime. This is why he's won one playoff game in his entire career. This is why the Vikings didn't extend his contract before this season. And he's in the unusual position of entering the final year of his contract. And the Vikings have no way to keep him next year. They can't tag him. And I don't think they want to keep him. I think the Vikings are committed to a not-so-secret plan of getting themselves another Fran Tarkenton. I was talking to somebody about this last night. The Vikings have never gone through an extended stretch of bad to the point where they bottom out and they can go get themselves a franchise quarterback. It hasn't happened. So, not that they want to go through an extended stretch of bad, but they're prioritizing, I believe, as an organization, positioning themselves to get a franchise quarterback. They have not had a franchise quarterback year to year. Dante Culpepper was close until his knee got wrecked in Carolina in October of 2005. Dante Culpepper was on track to be that guy. But The Vikings haven't had it since Fran Tarkenton. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.